Hello, and thanks for returning to watch one more episode of Garage Time. This week we're going to continue to tackle that fender, hopefully getting to the outside patch on the wheel arch. And to do that, I'm going to use a CNC machine.
Garage Time.
Okay, so it's on there for good. Aside from my little, double welding mishap, this part came out okay. The important thing is that this fits on like so, and there's a good alignment between the fender and the curvature of the grill. And I believe there's a gasket that goes between here, so I left a little bit of room for this thing to, have a foam gasket between it. So next step is to include the piece that goes all the way along the bottom here, and we'll do that now. I've gotten some good alignment here with the grill to the fender and the curvature. I got this dolly kind of holding it in position. This is taped in place. I have some shims here, cardboard shim, to give it some distance there for future paint. And this new piece here, the part that holds this together, is now clamped in place, multiple places. So it's perhaps a little large in this section, but until we get the housing mounted, we will leave that there for trimming later. But it looks like it's together and ready to weld. So I'm going to go ahead and just tack this in place. I've already lost a little bit of alignment here on the bottom where these clecos were to make an adjustment. I have the rear supported using this old jack to have the right height here, and the housing does fit. Here's a close-up of the attachment from the center brace to the fender. Now, I decided to add a small gusset here. This corner wasn't originally in my template, but when I look at the pictures, I see that there's a wide section on the top, and that does correspond with the way the back of the housing is designed. The back of the housing has a small relief there, so rather than having a narrow connection here, this is spread over a larger distance, almost 3/4 of an inch. So that weld is stronger now. It won't break. I'll probably weld on the back side too. And then this is just tacked in on the bottom and a small tack here in the middle. Now I've just made that small L bracket there on the bottom, and it's roughly in the right place. It's a little bit loose, but I'm going to tack it in place and then drill the hole so that the housing has something to mount to. So you can see the bracket is mostly hidden from the front view. Here's a quick view of that little bracket. It's just a simple L, probably about not 90 degrees, probably 75, 80 degrees. And it's a little bit thicker sheet metal. This is probably 18 gauge because it has some strength to it. So I'm not going to punch the hole in it yet. I'm going to weld it first and then mark the hole and drill it later. Okay, you can see here I have the tab mounted and clamped in place. So now it's time to weld it on. Here's the tab welded in. It's welded in from from the sides there. Just the edges are tacked in place. That should be enough to hold it there. Rather than doing a plug weld, I just welded the edges with the TIG welder. So here it is lined up. Tried to get the curvature here to be smooth. And then the nice thing about doing this on a flat table or on a bench is that we can also line it up in this direction. So I have a few small shims in here, a split washer to help kind of hold it in place so that there's clearance for the hood to close, and also the fender is not, you know, completely flat to the table. So I'm going to mark this hole and drill it, and we'll have something to attach a Longhood part to a 74. I'm using some transfer punches to punch that hole or mark that hole. So that's just a starter hole. Likely we're gonna increase the diameter of that hole for some adjustability. And also the factory used a clip for a sheet metal screw. To hold things in place, I'm just gonna use a number 4 screw and a nut on the back just to make sure things are correct. And there we go, it's now attached. There are some gaskets that go behind here. There is room for gaskets. I'd like to, I probably should have done it with the gaskets in place, but I don't have them at the moment. But I do see that there's some room here, and I don't think the gaskets do a whole lot anyways. Maybe quiet some vibration down. I've got my bench cleaned off again so I could flip the fender over to access the back side of this one. This tab is on this side. You need to flip it to get to this one. It's a very similar tab. I mean, it's identical. Angle's slightly different on this one, it looks like, but it goes in here just like that. And I'm just gonna round the corners and trim this back of it a little bit. And same thing, tack it in place, mark it, drill it, screw it on. So the new tab is welded in and looks okay. I'm going to let it cool down and mark the hole and screw it down. And there it is, my first Longhood part attached with screws. Not the right screws, but it's on temporarily so we can finish the rest of the turn signal housing. Here's how it looks from this side. Not too bad. I'm just now looking at the fit of the grill with the lens, and it's mounted onto a flat table, which is nice because the bumper is flat. But I'm noticing in order to make it flat to the table, there is a pretty large gap here on top. And then as you come to the side, it fits a little bit better. Well, I walked away for a bit and had some lunch and thought about what to do here with this extra space, extra gap here. And as much as I would like to just cut it and fix it and make it look great, I think I'm gonna wait on that because one, it's just here on a table. I have the rear of the fender elevated to some amount, which may not be correct once it's on the car. So I'm gonna continue with the brackets, make it complete, but this is really a body and paintwork exercise, whether it's filler or cutting. To do that properly, it needs to be mounted on the car with the bumper underneath it and manage all the gaps, both here, here, and on the bumper, all at the same time. Okay, from the best I can tell, the rear portion of the turn signal housing is attached with a pretty simple bracket here. So here's a template. Goes flat against the back of the housing, and it has this flange here which will tilt up and mate onto the section which is missing here. All right, the next step is to get the shape of the wheel arch to attach the missing piece to the fender. This is the bumper that I plan to use. This is something that I picked up used. It's fiberglass. This is the Carrera RS fiberglass front bumper. I'm not sure who the manufacturer on this is, but I happened to find the front and the rears for an okay deal. So rather than try to hold this up to the fender, it's kind of awkward and big, I'm going to make a template just using more cardboard. There it is. The idea here is to get these curves to connect. So there's a strong curve here, and then it goes to a reverse curve this way. So this is where the bumper will be. And just need to adjust it. I also need to duplicate this raised portion. As it comes down, it's going to taper to almost flat. That's how, you know, the pictures are, and that's how the bumper is. The bumper is flat coming this way. So I'm going to use this contour gauge to trace this shape. This shape here. Onto a piece of paper. So I traced this pattern onto some cardboard, and it gets me close, but I'm going to try to fit it even better. All right, so now I have both this curve and this curve determined, and this ridge is going to continue this direction and then softly fade away. It does so on the rear arch of the fender, and that's what I intend to do here. It's only over about a 3-inch distance, but we got to get this together. And to form that piece is somewhat difficult. I don't think I can use pliers. I don't think I can use the bead roller. So what I intend to do is make a hammer form. That's just a cavity in which you just hammer the metal into it till it can't go anymore. I decided to make this hammer form using this CNC machine. The two-dimensional templates were converted to electronic files to create this three-dimensional shape. And then the machine just does the work. So we've come back from the CNC machine, and here's that shape of the fender. So you can see, this is the curve on the top of the fender. There should be kind of a harsh ridge here where the fender well is, and then this is just sloped, and there's some tooling marks on there. I'm just going to quickly sand it and make it nice so we can hopefully hammer the shape of the fender. Now this is wider than it needs to be, but I plan on shaping it and then trimming it after, so it's intentionally wider. So this is MDF, and I didn't sand all the tooling marks off. They're not going to translate into the sheet metal. It's pretty smooth. So I have a right and a left, and you can see that shape. It's a three-dimensional shape, but it's on a curved surface this way. So, this is not the only way to do it. There's probably simpler ways. For me, this was pretty simple for me. I spent about an hour after I made the templates. I just spent an hour in the computer to program this shape, and it's just some scrap wood, CNC machine I have access to. So let's see how it works. Well, I just happen to have my plasma cutter kind of plugged in and the cables are out, so I made these two parts, so hopefully I have a right and a left. Probably going to need to do this more than once. Here's just one more check of what I'm trying to do. So we only care about from here to this line. This line is where the turn signal ends. So that metal is going to be shaped just like this to continue down to here. Okay, so rather than try to just, hammer this into the shape, I'm going to mark this curve. This is the original template I took off the car. I'm going to mark this curve on here and trim it some, and also maybe use the bead roller to get it to start into that curve. I've also measured that the flange of the fender, this flange here is about 5/8 of an inch max. I'm going to screw the metal down to the hammer form just to prevent it from, moving around. So here it is before I remove it from the Hammerform. It has a little bit of spring back to it, but mostly it's gone. It's just, you know, moving ever so slightly inside that channel. So you can see this edge here goes deeper than this edge, and it shifted in the form just a little bit. I had it clamped on this section, but it's okay because I really need these two, between these two black lines is what I really need. And it should be okay. So let's take the screws out, take the clamp off, and see how the outside looks. So if you look really closely, you can see some of the marks, just a few hammer marks on there, and we'll try to hammer those out. But that's roughly the shape that we need.
Well, we're out of time again for this episode. Hopefully next week we'll get to weld on this patch we just made and move on to the other side. So once again, please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out.